I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman, Chairman of the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee. The American Fire Service is rich in tradition and culture. A firefighter's life is filled with many emotional highs and lows. Stories of major fires, national disasters, medical calls, firehouse living, and family life are often verbally shared from one generation to another. Many times, these stories are lost forever when a firefighter passes away. In an effort to preserve these stories, in 2019, the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee launched a new program of recording audio-video of our retirees' lives. These stories will be shared on our website, gfhbc.org. In 2020, we did not record because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please listen as these firefighters share their life experiences with all of us.
My name is James Vincent Atkins. I started in the fire service in 1983 in the volunteer fire service, and I came on in Greensboro in 1989. And I was engineer, driver at the time of retirement. I retired in 2019. I was born in Greensboro, but I lived in Colfax, North Carolina. Before I came to the Greensboro Fire Department, I was in construction. I was actually running some heavy equipment when I got out of high school, and yeah, it was a challenging career. I learned a lot about people, you know, being around roughnecks and stuff, and but I decided to get into the professional firefighting end of it when I realized that, you know, when it's bad weather and it's wintertime, yeah, you might make 20 hours a week, and you know, I had plans to, you know, get a house and a family, and I just looked at it and said, well, if I'm going to do that, then I'm going to have to get something that's going to be steady. And yeah, so I loved the fire service, being in the volunteer end of it, and I just decided to pursue it professionally. Yes, the things that made me want to become a firefighter is my dad was in the volunteer fire service at Colfax for about 15 years. And I saw that as a challenge and something to keep me out of trouble. And it definitely did. Got to watch a lot of people make their own mistakes, you know, in life, on the calls that we would run. And yeah, that's where I had an ambition to do that. The hiring process for Greensboro, and what I had to do is of course I came, and it was Chief Spears and Deanne Staley were in training at the time, and had to go through the physical agility test out on the fire ground, go through the medical stuff to get on, and yeah, just basically what they have to do today. It was funny, one of the questions that Spears asked me in my interview and Deanne was sitting there, he asked me if I had an issue with a woman giving me orders and telling me what to do. And me being an old country boy, I just kind of said, well, my mom's been telling me what to do all my life. I said, no, sir, I don't have a problem with that. My starting salary was in the neighborhood of, I think it was about under $20,000 a year in '89, if I'm not mistaken. My training class was approximately 18 weeks. Some of the people that was in my class was Jackie Beard, Rick Merle, Michael Carlson. Of course, he had to go through training twice because he come in through Reedsville, and then he decided to come to Greensboro, so he had to go through all that over again. Jackie Spoon, some of those that are no longer with us, and we had 31 people in our class whenever we came through. I don't know if we were the largest class or not, but that was a huge class. Well, some of the funny stories that happened in training was, I can remember one particular was Jackie Beard. On Fridays we had this thing where it was kind of like either a skid or you did something that you had some skills with or whatever, and Jackie was a dairy farmer prior to coming to the to the fire service, and he was I think he was assistant chief down in Deep River. But anyway, he got his wife to bring a cow on that Friday, and his thing was he was going to artificially inseminate a cow right on the fire ground out here on the training center. And I remember Deanne Staley standing right beside of me whenever he was doing that, and she was just in awe, because I suspect she was a country gal, and she just never seen anything like that. Not to get into any details, but yeah, that was very interesting for the entire class whenever he did what he had to do. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, there were some moments that in my career where I felt like I was in my place of doing what I needed to do. Over at Station 8 with some crews over there, we fought a lot of fire. Everything's kind of cyclic in the city. Buildings get old or whatever, and we were burning a lot of things whenever we was up at Station 8. They've rebuilt a lot of things through the years, but what I would tell the firemen, the younger firemen, is that as the city gets older and some of these buildings get older, you'll get into a cycle to where you're burning a lot of things again. We burned a lot down, back then. But another time whenever I felt like I had finally found my niche was whenever I got moved to Station 20 out in that area and we started getting involved with the tank farm facilities and stuff. So that kind of fell in, and we'll talk about a little bit more of that later. Well, my first assignment when I came on the department, Chief Deanne Staley pulled me to the side before graduation, and she asked me where I would like to go. And I said, well, I was in the volunteer fire service, and I know engine company operations and tanker operations, but I don't know anything about a ladder truck. I said I'd like to go to a ladder truck right out of the barn, if possible. So she accommodated me. She put me at Station 10 on High Point Road, on ladder 10, or what you'd call, I guess we called it truck 10 back then. And I didn't know how to cook, so she put me on the shift with Charlie Thompson, and he was a good mentor when it come to cooking. Now, he probably took 10 years off my life with cooking with fatback and stuff like that, old school stuff. But I was with Sid Ray, Captain Sid Ray. He was on a ladder truck with me, and Charlie McCoy was my driver, along with Mike Smith. He was on the back with me. Well, with all humor, as far as something with Sid being my first captain, that I learned real quick is, and I say this with terms of endearment, when you got through sitting down on the bench with Sid, you needed a little ear salve, because he would talk your ears off. But I loved him to death. I'm telling you, that guy. He was a good fireground captain. He brought calm to the storm, and I really truly enjoyed Sid. Some of the other people that were there was Joe Anderson, Danny. I can't remember his last name.
Simpson.
Danny Simpson. Yeah. Morgan.
David Moore.
David Moore. well, we called him Morganis. He came on with me. Of course, Mike Smith, of course, and there was a few more I can't even remember.
That's fine.
now. Some of them called me JV because my name's James Vincent, you know. So yeah, some of them just call me JV. So yeah, there was a few pranks through the years that come to mind. Over at Station 8, the shower in there had a little lip that come over that was high at the door, and we'd be on a fire or something. We would make it a little bit taller and to where it would hold water, we'd tape it up at the doorway, and we'd fill that whole thing up in there, block the drain, and we'd make like a swimming pool in there. It'd be like 3 foot deep. But it got to the point to where it started pushing the walls out, so we had to stop that. But we had another prank that I remember us doing one night, and I'm going to not name names to protect the innocent, but we had a rookie that was, he always took the trash out at night, you know, after we got through with supper. And one of my cohorts asked me to get up on top of the building with a 5-gallon bucket of water when he come out the door, you know, just kind of dump it on him. Well, if we want to talk about physics of water, weighing 8.33 pounds per gallon, and you multiply that times 5 gallons, from a height of probably 20 feet, you can just imagine whenever that water came out of that bucket, it didn't pour out, it came out in a blob, and it hit him square in the back. We thought we had killed him. It was about 45 pounds of water hit him just straight away. But yeah, there was some pranks through the years, and that's probably the only two that I want to really talk about. Back in the day, the union didn't do what the union does today. As far as it being active, it was active, but it wasn't what I would consider productive back in the day. I'm really proud of what the union has done, that they are allowed to be able to do, since we're not really recognized as, you know, collective bargaining. But I feel like that the union that is out here today has done a tremendous benefit in working with administration and with the city to do what needs to be done. As far as firehouse living and cooking and things of that nature, early in my career, we did a lot of cooking together. You had your own cook day, of course, but as I went through my career, and especially when I got moved to 20, and being busy with projects and truly involved in some important activities, the time to do those particular things kind of got jammed up, and a lot of people were on their own diets too, because of health reasons, or they wanted to look after their health. So yeah, we just kind of were on our own, or for lunch, and sometimes supper. We'd go to the grocery store during the day, and we would cook together some, but it ended up not being a normal practice to do. Yeah, I do see value in companies cooking together, and you know, some of the best talks, or what I would consider training, happens at the kitchen table, because you get to hear a lot of stories and experiences that can't be matched in a training center or in a training setting by sitting at the table and just talking about how you might have almost got yourself killed, or tell some stories from some experiences, some older firefighters that you worked with years ago, retell those stories, so they don't have to be lessons learned again, you know, so you don't have to relearn those lessons. So yeah, it's important that everybody kind of gather around, you know, several times a day. I was decent I wouldn't say I was a good cook, but I could hold my own. The firehouse meal was, corned beef and cabbage and pintos and macaroni and cheese, slaw and cornbread. Yeah, not to say that put a whole lot of years on your life by eating that, but yeah, it was a good meal. Well, typical shift change, like we said, was 24-48, 24 on, 48 off. In the morning, the guys will usually meet in the kitchen or on the bay floor, and the officers will either be up in the office or they can be in the kitchen drinking a cup of coffee and do their exchange. But everybody has their responsibilities, and it's an important responsibility of following through with the crew coming on of what you did during the day that was bullet points that was important. Especially if there was some equipment that needed some attention, that was out of service or needed to be refilled or whatever. It was very important. I felt like that if you had a call early in the morning, such as a fire or a medical call where it just destroyed your bag or whatever, to stay over and not allow that crew coming on to have to deal with your mess. Now, there was a lot of times where if we were coming on and a crew had been through, a hard time that night, we would say, hey, we've got it. Y'all hit the road, we got it. If you needed to stay and sleep, we didn't want anybody driving home exhausted. There's the bed, go get in it, nobody's gonna bother you. I remember a chief one time over at Station 8, Chief Parker. He was an old head, and one of the captains complained about the squad guys being in the bed after running 15 calls in a 24-hour shift. And the chief kind of spoke up and he said, I'm not gonna call his name, but he said, I'm just going to say Bud. Well, Bud, I want to tell you something. I guess a man knows when he's hungry and he knows when he's tired. You leave them boys alone. Because they still had UFers to do, and back then they kind of wanted you to have them done before the next shift. And but with the squad guys, they allowed them a little bit of leniency because you just couldn't get caught up. So, well, you had the blue, the yellow on the UFers, and on the reporting, you had to, if I remember correctly, they had blue, yellow, and white. Blue was what you had, yellow is what you did, and then the white one was more medical. So yeah, you had 3 sheets of paper, and we didn't have computers until probably 97 or 98 is whenever we first got the computer systems, if I'm remembering. So from 89, well, even on back before I got on, they were doing UFers, and so I'm thinking about 97 or 98, which sadly, when the computer system come on, some of the older guys that were on, it kind of pushed a few of them out because they just weren't, I'm not going to say they weren't willing to learn, but I think it was overwhelming to some of them, and they were like, it's time to go, kind of thing. But honestly, I feel like the computer system created more work than it did, because you used to be able to just do your report, you're done. You'd always hear a captain at night after supper say, I got 2 hours of paperwork. He had to do his logbook, do his reports, and then whatever the rest of the evening, other than running calls, you pretty much had your time. But the system they've got now, you can stay on that computer just as much as you feel like you need to. It just eats up so much time. The stations that I was at in my career, I was at Station 10 first. Then Chief Murphy wanted me over at 8, and I went over there and stayed there for a good while. I was requested to go to 5 but I wasn't really comfortable with driving those huge ladder trucks at the time over in those kinds of streets. It's a liability. I could have done it, but I just didn't feel like I needed to. So I went from there, from 8, got promoted to driver, went to 15, which is 48 now, if I'm not mistaken. Stayed there for a while. Really didn't have a captain down there for a long time because it was supposed to be Phil May, and he was out on medical leave, and we had to deal with several guys that was on the list to get promoted, and they were wearing us out going to the training center. And I finally had to ask OC, I said, OC, pick one of these guys and leave them down here because they're competing and they are wearing us out. So yeah, we finally got Ricky. I mean, Mike Willits. He was good. We had a good time. And then I went from station 15 back to 8. The lesson that I learned with that is the station had changed, and what had changed was it's the people that you were with. The people that I was there with before I got promoted weren't on my shift then, and yeah, that's something that I learned if you try to go back. That's a good question about the sleeping quarters, the dorms versus the cubicles. Never was really at a station that had the cubicles. I've been in the stations that had them. The advantage of a cubicle would be if you were, of course you have your privacy, of course, but that's not really important in the fire service, you know, the way we live and what our culture is. The only thing that I could see would be an advantage to the cubicle situation would be if you were studying for a promotional exam to where you had your quiet area. The dorm setting is fun. It's absolutely fun. I mean, I remember us stacking toilet paper beside the beds and chunking toilet paper over across the way to the guy that'd be snoring his head off, you know. But yeah, as far as I think the dorm setting brings everybody and brings them together. I don't think separation is good. Yeah, early in my career, the families would get together, say on a Sunday, and that was really good. It got to give you a dynamic of the people that you were working with. As time went along in my career, there was a few occasions that some families would come in, but it wasn't like it was early on in my career. It kind of dwindled out as far as that goes. But other stations that I had been to, besides going back to 8, I got shipped to Station 18 in the house for a while. There's an interesting story there real quick. I didn't really like being in a house because it wasn't a fire station. So I made a request to the battalion commander, which was Chief Spears at the time, and said, I don't care where you send me. You send me to 20 if you want to. I think he was shocked that somebody wanted to go to 20 because at the time, Bruce Stewart, which was a classmate of mine, he was wanting to go to hazmat, which was at 19. So Chief Spears asked me, he says, how soon can you have your stuff packed? I said, I never unpacked it. So the next shift I was at 20 and Bruce got to go to hazmat, and that worked out for everybody. So that was whenever I got to go to Station 20. Yeah, if you ever do go back to a station that as a retired firefighter, and you do darken the doors again, you know, it's kind of weird in a way because there's new faces, you know, unless there's someone that you've worked with or that you know. But I think yes, it's kind of weird. But yeah, if the guys wanted to sit down and, you know, chew the fat, and, you know, it's important for them to listen and learn, from the retired guys, because they may say something that may save their life. I think the value in these interviews is that the younger generation gets to see and hear some of the battles and some of the war stories that's going on, and hear some advice about career development and things that they need to take advantage of when they can. One of the main things that I would say to the younger group is that if there is an opportunity and you have the qualifications to meet that opportunity, to jump on it. One of the things right now, like I said earlier on, there's a lot of things that are cyclic in the department. With buildings are burning and you won't have fires for a while, and then it goes back and forth. Same thing exists with promotions. When we came on, it was an older department, had a lot of experience that we learned from whenever we came on. Now, presently, in 2022, you've got a very young department. There will be some attrition through retirements, but the promotional opportunities are not going to be as abundant as they have been. And the guys need to realize that. Don't say, well, I'm going to wait until I do this or what. No, if you've got the qualifications and you've got the opportunity, take it and get yourself promoted, because the positions, what I consider, and I may be wrong and someone could argue with me about it, can get locked up for a while. Carl Eller is a good example of being a battalion chief for 19 or 20 years in his career. So how long I'm not saying he held up a promotion, because that was his career, that was his position, but he got promoted at a younger age and he didn't get moved up, so therefore his particular position held that position for a long time. If you look at the roster now and you look at these younger guys that are in those positions, until somebody goes way up top, you don't get moved up unless somebody gets above you. So yeah, you got an opportunity, take it. I do remember my first call, my first fire. It was over Station 10. It was off Merritt Drive, and I think we only had like maybe 3 on the engine that day, but we had a full complement on the truck. And it was a structure fire, and it was a house that was kind of like a hoarder's house. And I wanted to do everything right, being a rookie, and had Mike Smith with me. We went upstairs and we were ventilating, and I started to pull the shades up, and open the window up, and Mike was like, "Look, let me show you something." Took that pickhead axe and he just raked that window, tore the blinds and everything off of it, and just started popping windows. And I was sitting there going, "Oh wow!" And he was like, "Look around you. They're gonna bulldoze this place, dude. Get it done." So yeah, that was my first fire, and yeah, that was something I had to learn. Some of the bigger incidents that I was on, I can think of 3 of them right off bat. Would be D.H. Griffin, when it caught on fire late in my career. Of course, I had some big fires throughout my career, but D.H. Griffin was an all-dayer. It was huge. There we had 2 foam operations going on because we didn't know what we had burning. The other one was the tank fire, of course. That was an epic event.
How long were you there?
Oh, we were there a good probably 16 hours, our shift. We came in, me and Dan Folk came in that night, probably around 12. The other, and I'll talk some more about that in a minute, but the other call was tanker fire down off of the loop, southern part of Greensboro with 10 and Pinecroft Sedgefield. And I can say that that particular fire was probably 6-8 months before I retired. I kind of felt like it was time to go. And the reason why was because it really wasn't a challenge. It was like a bread and butter house fire to me. But for them younger guys, it was a challenge for them. But, yeah, the night of the tank farm was very exciting for me and scary. I can say that all of us, Pat Henley being in command, Dan being a new captain on the phone task force, Jim Robinson was there, Craig Smith was there, Chief Spears was there. I remember Craig saying, Vince, let us know what we need to do, and we'll do it. And I said, well, you stay right in my hip pocket with that radio and we'll see what we can get done. And this was kind of the icon, I guess, of the tank fire. I had it hanging in the station for a while, and I stopped by there one day and I just went ahead and picked it up because I knew I wanted it in a special place. So I guess I'm going to ask that the training division put it in the shadow box, and I put a picture of the tank fire with it, so it's kind of a conversation piece and they can kind of ask. The style of the helmets that we were wearing were all red, but the guys that were on the team kind of wanted me to have a helmet that was different so they could see where I was.
Really?
So I kind of picked this out and it was like, okay, now y'all can see where I'm at, because
So
we're
they,
spread out.
by your helmet, they followed you.
Well, no, they just wanted to know where I was at, for good or bad. Yeah. So, and we put some stickers on them, match identifying, the department itself, and then you've got Williams Fire and Hazard Control, which is the group that gave us we bought the equipment from, and the number 819 symbolizes the tank number at Colonial Pipeline that actually burnt. And then there's just all kinds of different stickers with different products that we would use, putting one of those out. And plus we've got the number where we could call if we ever, that was one of the reasons we had a telephone number you could call if you got in trouble. And then the Union sticker on the top, of course. And the flag, is for the industry, the guys that do this particular task professionally, they've got their own identity, out there. Red Adair, that group was for wild well fires, and Williams Fire and Hazard Control was for the tanks. So they all work together. I think the value in riding medical calls, it's more personal between the fire department and the citizenry. I think that's one of the reasons why we've ranked number 1 in city services, for multiple years running. Well, there was several people that mentored me throughout my career that I'd like to kind of focus on. Chief Spears was our training officer, and I really looked up to him for how his leadership was. One of the things that I saw in training whenever we were particularly going through our hydraulics, which a lot of people had issues with, was he stayed over and worked with us, several days, and he cared about not just testing, but he cared about people learning. So those were things with Chief Spears. And I'll have to say that whenever he was my battalion commander, and we started what we considered the tank farm project in the beginning, Colonial Pipeline came to the department and asked for us to evaluate their fire problem. And Chief Spears knew that I had some flammable liquids background with my dad, and he came to me and said, hey, look, let's put a program together and let's just investigate what, through formulas and through the best materials that we had at the time, what can we do, and let's find out where our deficiencies are. To make a long story short, we were very deficient in our capabilities, and the city had had them annexed for many, many years, and it was a worthy project. And to really make a long story short, it was about a 10-year project prior to the actual tank fire. And we, God, I guess, put the right people in place, and we gathered all the information and did purchases and got some great grants to buy the equipment. And the rest is history. Eddie Nix was probably one of my best captains that I had, where you would consider him to be tactical and strategic and calm. And he was one of the old heads that you miss now, or I missed throughout my career, as these specific guys retired. The department missed those type of folks. I'd like to mention Paul Miner. Paul Miner was a mentor to me. He was on the foam engine for many years prior to me coming to Station 20, and he guided me through that piece of equipment. And he was not only a mentor for the foam end of it, but he was someone to emulate in how he cared for his truck. And hopefully, me working under him and just watching him, I passed that on to some of the guys that I worked with too. Tommy at the garage was another individual that I was able to work with, that were, the garage always picked on people, and I wasn't immune from being picked on, but Tommy and I seen eye to eye on a lot of things, and we communicated well. And as I go through this list, I'd like to tell the younger guys that it's important for you to network, not use people, but to make a network of people that you can surround yourself with that will help you throughout your career. And you can lean on each other. Like with Tommy, he leaned on me for my portion of my expertise, and I leaned on him for things that he knew that I didn't, and we helped each other with that. Captain Slowbaum was a good man that I worked under. I used to pick on him whenever he would do my evaluations, and whenever I was through with my part of the narrative in the evaluation, I'd always write down there, "Thank you, Captain, for allowing us to be all we could be." And he would call BS on that sometimes. He'd be like, "What are you talking about?" But he did. He allowed you to grow. He made an atmosphere where you could grow. He never tried to hold you back. He was open-minded to anything, sometimes to a fault, but he was a good man. I got to mention Bill Horn. He was probably the most astute, smart fireman that I have ever worked with. Bill contributed to this department before he left, and I miss him. I missed him. But I'm gonna tell you what. Whenever we got working the numbers with some of the math that we had to do for the tank farm stuff, Bill saw something that nobody else saw in the math. And he and I would sit there on the board sometimes at night till 2 or 3 in the morning, and you'd see that easel up there. It looked like Einstein had been writing on it, and we would blow the next shift's mind when they would come in the morning because it looked like, you know, a math class exploded on the board. And Bill found a way. There was a logistics issue with the way Williams Fire and Hazard Control was doing some of their hose for distributing foam with the system we had to do. He cut that down to almost nothing. I mean, the way Williams was doing their stuff, we would have had to pull hose from about every company in the department for 2,500 foot lengths of things. We would just had to use a whole lot of hose. He simplified that. We called the engineers at Williams, and they said, "Boys, y'all been doing some homework. We're going to study this." And to this day, to the best of my knowledge, they're still using the system that Bill Horn came up with.
Great.
He was a good friend too. I'd like to mention Joe Wood. Joe was in special ops, and he was doing some emergency management stuff. But he was a mentor. He was an advocate. Any ideas that we had, he was right there with us in the trenches on a lot of things. And he was a great support. I can't say enough about Joe. He's probably one of the smartest guys that never got promoted above captain, that should have probably been given a waiver and, you know, waive the educational part, because people's got families. And while I'm talking about that, I'd like to talk about Ken Smith. You know, Ken Smith and Joe are probably great examples where, and I don't know what the solution is to this, but those two guys would have been great officers above and beyond where they ever were in their career. Ken Smith would have made an excellent captain, but he had a family, and he chose family, which is absolutely outstanding in my book, instead of sacrificing his family for his career. But I feel like the department missed out on probably several guys that I can't mention their names right off the bat, but those two guys with Joe and Ken, they would have made excellent officers, whether they had that piece of paper or not. Yeah, they were men's men kind of guys. Jim Robinson, chief of the fire department presently today. Got to meet Jim whenever I was at Colfax Fire as a resident. Jim came in. I saw a lot of people come and go out of that department as far as resident programs. But Jim came in, and he lived there with me at the station while he was going to college, before he came on here. One story I can tell you, one night it was about 12, it was after midnight, we were in the bed, and somebody banged on the front door, and we got up, and they were screaming and hollering, "There's a big fire down the road." And we looked out, and yeah, we could see the flames from the station. So me and Jim jumped on the engine, and we got on there, of course, said we had a passerby, structure fire. As soon as we get there, we'll give the address. And we did. It was Beeson Sign Company. And ended up that their sign truck was sitting where they parked it, and it had shorted out, and it was still in gear. It was a straight drive, and the starter shorted out and pushed the truck into the building, and it caught on fire. And when we got there, it wasn't but a big square flame. There was a house next door that was an exposure. We only had 500 gallons of water on the truck. Now remember, the dispatch is behind the 8 ball. We're on the scene. Told Jim, said, "I'm gonna pull a 2.5." I said, "You got 2 minutes of water, dude." Well, Jim pulled 2.5, and he fought fire. He knocked a lot of fire down. but we ran out of water. We're about half a mile from the station, and I'm sitting there going, we should have brought the engine or the tanker. One should have brought the tanker, and I should have, and I'd have just hooked them together. But I started calling for Kernersville, Oak Ridge, Deep River, whoever, and felt like we were there for a year before I ever heard any sirens. But yeah, once everybody got there, had more water than we ever would have needed. But I want to say this to the young people: always be nice to everybody that you're ever around or ever associated with, and treat them decently, because one day you'll never know who's going to be your boss. And Jim is the boss now, and I respect him. I'm fortunate to know the man. We've been through a lot, and we've experienced a lot, but I never took advantage of those relationships. And that's one thing that you need to do if you are ever involved with someone that does become your boss. Remember where you are, remember what position you hold, and remember what position he holds, and give him the respect that he's due for what he's done. And finally, I'd like to talk about Jerry Phillips. What can we say about Jerry? Jerry is a very knowledgeable man. I think he's been in the fire service maybe since 1974. I wish that he had got promoted throughout his career, but along with that, I can say Jerry probably was able to do more for this fire department and for the fire service in general where he is right now. His hands touch more than he probably could have touched had he got promoted. So he's been a tremendous asset. He's been a great friend to me. He's been a great mentor. He's helped me with a lot of projects and things that I couldn't have done without him. As far as heartbreaking things that I've seen, I can just generalize it and say that anything that has to deal with kids or the elderly, especially where either one of them is abused, those are things that I don't tolerate, and it affects me more, the kids and the elderly, where they're put in a situation where they're not cared for properly the way they're supposed to be. I think there was a hospice house that was over near 19, when we got moved to 19, that we had to go to on a normal basis, and those people that are actually caring for those people are angels. It's heartbreaking to see someone's eyes that that they know their time is short on this earth. I think dealing with tragedy, it's important for your relationships with inside the firehouse have to begin before any kind of tragedy happens. You need to have, there was some things, particularly over at Station 8, and Captain Eddie Nix would always, tell us, guys, there's programs to where we can bring some people in. There would be something that would happen, and he said, but it's important for us to talk about it first. And if after that you feel like you need something extra, you just let me know. And I enjoyed that with Eddie, not pushing us to do something we didn't want to do, but he brought his crew together to where, if we felt like we needed to talk, whatever we had to say was going to stay in that firehouse, and it was going to stay in that room, and it was going to be amongst us. And that meant a whole lot to us, to have someone to support us like that. Would I do it all over again, or would I change anything? Me and Jerry Phillips talked about this about a year ago, and we asked each other, is there anything on your bucket list that you haven't checked the box on yet? And both of us, the answer was no. If you can walk away from your career knowing that you did the best job that you could do, that's all that you can ask of yourself. And don't put any kind of challenges on yourself that you can't meet to where you feel like you've hurt yourself by having those challenges. Well, it was one thing that we both said was we didn't ever have what you would consider the fire towering inferno movie, that was there. It was like, no, we never was one of those, and no, we didn't miss out on anything. So we pretty much fulfilled everything that we ever wanted to do. As far as roles of the firemen doing today that they didn't do back then, and vice versa, I think we need to take everything that we're doing within the fire service, within any organization, and lay it all out on the table. Okay? And you need to look and see, what can I do away with? Especially before you add one more thing to their plate. Are the things that we're doing, the only thing that I saw in my career that we ever done away with was a logbook. But we kept adding things along the way. Are there some things that we can adjust and like I say, do away with, to where we're doing a better job at the things that matter, such as training, actually having more hands-on, asking the guys what they really need, what do you need, instead of having a curriculum, that you're following out of a book. I think the specialized teams are very necessary, and I think that no one person can be a jack of all trades. Station 5 amazes me with all the things that they've done. I don't know. It used to be like trench rescue was, at one station, I think it was 11, you had, no, they were building collapse, and then you had trench rescue at 8, and then you had some different things spread out amongst the department. I know the concept and the thought process of putting everything under one roof, but I also feel like the danger in that is that you can be diverse, but you're never going to be 100% skilled in that particular discipline. Ropes and high-rise is a discipline. Trench rescue is a discipline. Building collapse is a discipline. But trying to have a group of guys, a two-company station, be good at water rescue and all these other things, I think that's, and that's just my opinion. What's a successful firefighter? Well, a firefighter needs to realize that without them, the chiefs have no Indians. In other words, you need to take your job serious, be just as trained as anybody else does. I knew people that were firefighters their entire career, and they knew their job, and they were proud of their job, and they did their job well. Everybody can't be promoted. There's not enough positions. So while we're talking about that, I would say that do like the firefighter does. No matter what position you're in, learn your job you're in. If you get promoted, learn that job that you got promoted in before you try to get promoted to another job, because you're building a resume, okay? And your resume should be based on experience. But if you're just getting promoted and then waiting until the next opportunity comes along because you've got an education, you meet the requirements, and you're just trying to climb the ladder, you're doing yourself a disservice, because at some point you're going to get promoted well above your skill level if you didn't learn what you should have learned while you were down below. What I would like for the Greensboro Fire Department to remember about me, that I did my best. I hope that I helped a lot of people along the way, especially to do things the right way and for the right reasons. I'm a humble man. I have no need to be in the limelight. I'm just glad that I was a part of something that was bigger than myself. Being on the foam task force was one of the greatest things that I could have ever been a part of, and given the opportunity to be a part of. I hope I did it right. There's a lot of people in, a term of endearment, they call me the foam guru, which I would kind of shy away from because I didn't feel like that I didn't want to be that, but they kind of tagged that on to me. But I had, like I said, with a lot of people that was in my career, they enabled me to be the best that I could and put me into an atmosphere in a situation where I could do what I needed to do for the team and for the department. What would I like my family to remember about me? That I came from humble beginnings with a high school career and was able to do this job for 30 years and survive it. And that perhaps that I contributed to that particular foam task force to where I wouldn't call it a legacy, but it's something there that can be built upon whenever, we wrote a book on the curriculum for the Greensboro Fire Department. There was nothing out there for this particular discipline other than something that was in the industrial setting. So we wrote something that what I would call is a living document. If you find out something in the future that needs to be added or taken away, that's not a Bible that book was. Add to it, but it gives you a foundation for the new guys to come into the team and have a starting block, because it was 10 years worth of material that was either in our heads or wrote down on notes,
Right.
or in emails or text. It needed to be compiled. So that would be something that I would want the department to remember and carry on with the training. All the guys that I'd like to leave a special message to would be the ones that I worked with. I hope that I enhanced your career in some way, either with stories or pranks or the funny meals or whatever. I hope that whenever they mention my name that they have a smile on their face.
In closing, the Greensboro Firefighters History Book Committee hopes you have gained a greater insight into the dangers, the challenges, and emotional events that have influenced and shaped the American firefighter.